Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. Last week I opened the conversation about tattoos, and I'm recording this ahead of time, so I don't know what the reaction was, but I'm going to guess that there were a bunch of people who were upset and told me so in the comments, because when I floated this topic on Facebook back in December, I had significant pushback from some people who felt that this was trying to set aside Scripture. So let me assure you, I believe that the scriptures continue to be relevant, that we need to take them seriously. But I want to say that I take Scripture seriously enough to consider its cultural context so that we can understand why a command is given, so that we can not just slavishly follow a law that we don't understand. Maybe you've heard the story about the woman who always saw her mom whenever she cooked a ham, speaking of breaking the Torah food laws. But anyway, whenever she cooked a ham, she would slice off either end. And so when this young woman became an adult, she would always slice off the ends of the ham. And her husband asked her, "Honey, why do you do that? Why do you slice off the hams?" Well, my mom always sliced off the ends of the ham, so I'm doing it. So they called her up and asked her, "Mom, why do you slice off the ends of the ham?" And she said, "Well, because my pan wasn't big enough to fit it in otherwise." And so here's this woman slavishly doing what she saw her mother do, and the purpose no longer fits her context. Her pan's plenty big. She just thought you were supposed to. And no, you're not just supposed to. So what I'm advocating here is that we think carefully about the reasons why we do things so that we can do them well in ways that honor God. Today, I want to bring you to a passage in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6, where God announces to his people through Moses. This is Moses' last sermon before he dies. And here I'm reading from my own translation of the Hebrew for Deuteronomy 7:6. "For a holy people you are, belonging to Yahweh your God. Yahweh your God has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be his people, his treasured possession." What's remarkable to me about this passage is that the phrase holy people belonging to Yahweh is the same phrase that appears on the forehead of the high priest. In Exodus 28:36, we're told that the high priest is to wear a gold medallion on his forehead, and it's to read Kadosh LaYahweh, holy belonging to Yahweh. And Moses is remarkably saying to the whole people of Israel that they are a holy people belonging to Yahweh. What's true of the high priest is true of them as well. As a kingdom of priests, they look to the high priest for a visual model of how they're supposed to live. Now, that particular phrase that's on the high priest's medallion, holy belonging to Yahweh is just one word in Hebrew. It's the name Yahweh, and attached to the front of that name is the Hebrew letter Lamed, or L. So it's Yahweh. And what that means, the Lamed can mean in, by, for, or belonging to. And in particular, in ancient Israel, if you had a signet ring, like a ring with a large gemstone on it that's engraved so that you can press it into wax or clay to indicate that something belongs to you, that you're authorizing it, you're signing your name with it, that signet would bear the person's personal name with the lamed attached to the front of it. So if I had a ring like that, it would say Le Carmen, and I could stamp it into wax or clay to indicate my signature. So it indicates this belongs to me, this is authorized by me. So the high priest is walking around with that on his forehead, the authorization of Yahweh for his ministry. He belongs to Yahweh. And that's what's true as well of the people of God, the people of Israel. Now, Isaiah 44 is a fascinating text in which God speaks through the prophet about a future time when he's going to pour out his spirit on his people and the covenant will be renewed. And it says, starting in verse 3, "For I will pour water on thirsty land and streams on dry ground. I will pour out my spirit on your offspring and my blessing on your descendants. They will spring up like grass in a meadow, like poplar trees by flowing streams. Some will say, I belong to Yahweh. In Hebrew here, it's Ani la Yahweh. So I belong to Yahweh, echoing that same phrase from Deuteronomy and from Exodus. Others will call themselves by the name of Jacob. Still others will write on their hand Yahweh, the Lord's or Yahweh's, and will take the name Israel. So Isaiah is looking ahead to a day when the covenant will be renewed and God's people will once again want to make a public statement that they belong to Yahweh. It's not just something they take for granted, but it's something that's central to who they are, the core of their identity. And then if you fast forward to the New Testament, which I don't often do in Torah Tuesday because I'm trying to stick to the Torah, but if you fast forward all the way to Revelation chapter 14, you see that the Apostle John has a vision in which what's been invisible through the ages becomes visible. You've heard of the mark of the beast, that people are walking around with the number of his name on their foreheads, but corresponding to that are the righteous who have the name of God written on their foreheads. And this should not surprise us because the high priest already had the name of God written on his forehead all the way back in Exodus. And Isaiah talks about a time when God's people would want to publicly identify themselves as belonging to Yahweh. So, as you're probably aware by now, I wrote my dissertation on the command not to take the Lord's name in vain, which I would translate as you shall not bear or carry the name of Yahweh your God in vain. I think that command connects in with this theme, and that it's recognizing that at Sinai, Yahweh claimed Israel as his own people by putting his name on them. If you look at Numbers 6:27, you can see that following the priestly blessing where they pronounce Yahweh's name 3 times over the people, it says, "And so you shall put my name on them, and I will bless them." So I believe that at Sinai, God's putting an invisible tattoo on his people to say, "You are mine." It's like he has a signet ring and he's stamping them, Yahweh, belonging to Yahweh. And so as I worked on this project, my dissertation, and as I studied this, I became more and more convinced that's what's going on in this command. Therefore, all of us who claim to belong to Yahweh, all of us, by extension, who follow Jesus, the Jewish Messiah, have been claimed to belong to Yahweh. We have an invisible tattoo. And so I decided it would be really cool to make the invisible visible. And so on my recent trip to Israel, I visited the world's oldest tattoo shop called Razuk Tattoo. They've been in business since the year 1300. 700 years of the same family tattooing pilgrims. That one of the things that's really unique about this shop is that the majority of those who come to them for tattoos are getting Christian symbols tattooed on their bodies because they've come to Jerusalem and it's been a pilgrimage for them. They want to mark this pilgrimage. So I heard about them. I thought, what better place to be marked as somebody who belongs to Yahweh than in Jerusalem, in the old city Jerusalem, by a family who's been doing this for 28 generations. So last month, on my trip to Israel, I went into Razuk Tattoo Shop and I got this tattoo, which reads "belonging to Yahweh." It's the same phrase that we find in Isaiah 44:5. It says that people will want to write it on their hand, and so I've written it on my hand. Nizar is the 28th generation tattoo artist who did my tattoo. He's 19 years old, has already been tattooing for quite a while. And I had a really good experience, and I'm excited about the conversations that this will open up for others. Let me just emphasize that this series on tattoos and the blog post series that I wrote that has even more detail on my thinking behind it is not to justify getting a tattoo. I didn't need to get a tattoo. I could have done without it. It was my study of the scriptures that convinced me that this symbol would be consistent with the teaching of scripture, that it would express what I think to be most true about myself, my identity and my vocation. I am somebody who belongs to Yahweh, and that means I'm marked to carry out his mission in the world. And so this tattoo is going to be a permanent reminder of that journey. If you want to read more about it, my published dissertation is Bearing Yahweh's Name at Sinai, a re-examination of the name command of the Decalogue. I don't talk so much about tattoos in there, but just about this command and how it should be read. And then the more popular version is Bearing God's Name, Why Sinai Still Matters. And it's accessible for anybody to read and understand, anybody from high school on up. And it expresses what I think is true of followers of Jesus, that we belong to Yahweh, that we've been called to be part of his people, and therefore part of his mission. I hope this has been interesting to you and helpful, and I pray that you would bear God's name with honor as you go about your week. Have a great week.